Hello, and welcome back to Friday Vinyl Club, where every day feels like a Friday and every album tells a story. I'm Jamie, and each episode I invite a guest to bring along one special record, an album that didn't just play in their life, but shaped it. This isn't about chart positions or critical reviews, it's about personal soundtracks, the records that stay with us long after the needle lifts. This episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Marcus Tung. Marcus is a songwriter, guitarist, and vocalist, best known for his work with the band Escaped Roots, where melody, storytelling, and musicianship sit right at the center of the music. Marcus has brought with him an album that does exactly that and feels quietly enduring. All the Little Lights by Passenger, both in its original release and the later anniversary edition. But before we dive into the album and why it matters to Marcus, let's rewind a little. Marcus, welcome to Friday Vinyl Club. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling really good. Actually, a pleasure to be on. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to digging deep and speaking about all this. Yeah, it's going to be really good fun.
Yeah, it's a conversation I've really been looking forward to. I'm a huge Passenger fan myself.
Oh, me
So
too.
talking about All the Little Lights album, it's something that's traveled with me over the years since it came out in 2012. So really looking forward to hearing your thoughts on that. And then touching on the anniversary album, which is a little bit more of a reflective piece of work that Passenger did. But
Yeah.
on this podcast, we always like to start at the beginning, Marcus, thinking about your earliest musical memories. Can you remember what music sounded like in the house when you were growing up?
Sure. Goodness me, it's been ingrained in me ever since I was very young. Now, my dad plays the drums. I've got musicians in the family. I've also got an uncle who played the guitar and uncles who played the bass. And sort of my earliest memories were sort of strolling around community halls, parties and anniversaries and things like that, and hearing my family, in fact, playing, the tunes of that time, the Kinks, the Doors, the Bryan Adams tunes, the sort of the covers, like a garage sort of rock band, and just playing all the biggest songs. And yeah, I just remember sort of strolling around, kicking balloons around sort of community halls while that was sort of seeping into me, really. And I'm going back to my dad, who's obviously the closest is the biggest influences were sort of the Wellers, the Bowies, but also sort of your power ballads in terms of the Bon Jovis and things like that. I had two sisters. One sort of very much leaning onto the indie side of music. So sort of she was very much introducing me to sort of the White Stripes and the Killers and Radiohead. But then I have my other sister who was very much sort of quite pop orientated with sort of your Celine Dion's and your Westlifes and sort of feeding that into me. But she also went through a few sort of adolescent years while she was listening to UK garage and rap and things like that. So that sort of seeped into me. And then just to top off with my mum was listening to sort of the divas, your Whitney Houstons, your Shaka Khans, but also sort of like Simply Red and Michael Jackson. So a huge melting pot of influences when I was growing up.
Wow. And was that passed around in the family? I mean, I have a big family myself. I got two older brothers, two younger sisters. But for me, music was a very independent thing. Was it very open in your family then?
Yeah, it was. It was. I said I'm very much an amalgamation of all that I've just mentioned there. It was very much sort of, I'm 36 this year, and so was born in 1990, and very much had MTV playing on the TV, and so, I remember dancing around to the tunes that are on, and obviously the 90s music scene was very quite dominant with sort of your pop stuff, but also the Oasis and the Blurs sort of coming through. So yeah, I guess it was sort of shared around. My two sisters are a little bit older than me, so it was very much me trying to find my way through that. It wasn't really shared too much, but just trying to find my space within what they were listening to, basically, and just enjoying it. And besides sort of listening to my family band, my dad and my uncle and my other uncles that were sort of playing, sort of trips to the coast were really important to me. I was quite an energetic child, and I love football. I'm football mad, but very much trips to the coast, going down to Brighton and Bournemouth with my family on the weekends, and some holidays were great. Where I was very energetic, and very much when I was playing in the house, music was always seeping into me. But these trips to the coast, I was always sat in the back seat, laying on my sister's laps, and that was always be where the music would seep into me, where I'd almost have to sit and listen rather
Mm.
than be running around and things like that. I'd have no choice but to be stuck in a car for about an hour and a half. So that was very much what my dad would like to play at that time. So that'd be your Wellers and your Bowies and your Bon Jovis, as I've sort of mentioned, and that seeped into me. And it sort of very sort of formulated what I have gone on to listen to and play myself, which is almost, alternative singer-songwritery rock, but also appreciating the big choruses and the sort of the big sound of certainly of the Bon Jovi.
Yeah, the car is a foundational part of us growing up, I think, isn't it? It's either when I was growing up, it was tape and radio, and
Mm.
then as I got older and I was driving myself, it started into CDs.
Yeah, yeah.
Nowadays, it's all on Spotify, isn't it? It's digital.
That's it. It's incredible how it's changed. I'm loving the appreciation of vinyl still. I think it's fantastic, and you see sort of CDs sort of still come and go and things like that. So there is for physical music, there is still a love and a joy, and I think people like to sort of cherish and have something that's obviously, as I say, a physical thing to hold and sort of cherish. And but very much, yeah, the streaming side has very much sort of taken hold, hasn't it?
It has, but yeah, you mentioned the physical media there, the vinyl. In
Mm,
2025, they sold $1 billion worth of vinyl, which is as
mm.
much as they did in 1986, apparently.
Incredible.
So it's had a renaissance for sure. So in that melting pot of all those different influences from your mum, your dad, and your sisters, um, can you remember the first time that you found your own music and you thought, actually, I can see myself in this. This is part of my identity.
Yeah, I sort of went through, I get you sort of start to sort of form your sort of likings around teenage years, and I was, I very much into new metal when I was coming out of primary school, going into secondary school, listening to your sort of your Limp Bizkits and your sort of Linkin Parks and things like that. And I discovered sort of the Red Hot Chili Peppers as well, really got into them, and then went into secondary school and got into, I sort of like the Libertines and the Arctic Monkeys and things like that. And then nearing the end of school, sort of got into, sort of started to mellow. Then I started to sort of mellow out a little bit. I started to sort of get into your likes of your John Mayer and things like that, and your sort of singer songwriters sort of thing. I'm not. I really couldn't tell you where. I'm very much into alternative folk artists. Your Laura Marlings, your Ryan Adams, people like that. Now I couldn't tell you. Where that's come from. I've explained over the period of this podcast where my influences have sort of come from, and I think if you look back, you can sort of see where sort of the amalgamation worked, but the sort of mellowing out and the sort of the acoustic folk tendencies of me, I don't know where it came from. I really don't know where it came from. I remember going into secondary school and coming out of secondary school, going into college, and I started almost buying into the aesthetic of, wearing the sort of the flannel shirts and getting into the likes of sort of, there was obviously a bit of a Mumford and Sons period where I started to enjoy their music and was listening to them. And I really couldn't nail down where I went from Red Hot Chili Peppers, John Mayer, Libertines, Arctic Monkeys, sort of findings, which very much dominated my early teens, to maybe where I am now, where I'm very much sort of alternative sort of folk, and obviously Passenger very much sitting at the heart of that.
Yeah, because it is a massive transition if you think about it, from going from Limp Bizkit to where you are now. I was going
Indeed.
to I was going to ask how, because when we're at school or when we're with friends, we pass music around. I wonder,
Mm.
was that a big part of it, or was that actually the new metal phase where you were getting influences from some of the kids at school?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Certainly the new metal thing and the biscuit and things like that. I was always walking around with my Walkman. I'd sort of be walking around. I remember very much having Meteora by Linkin Park, which is say maybe possibly their second most popular album. Hybrid Theory came before that, and walking around with my Walkman, and sort of talking amongst friends about that. And then, yeah, music was always sort of sharing. And then, I remember sort of around sort of secondary school, Panic at the Disco were quite big. It was very much, yeah, it was very much a chatty thing where we would exchange music and things like that. Yeah, and then I started playing the guitar when I was 16 years of age. So that was very much sort of just as I was coming out of secondary school. So that was quite formative for me as well.
You mentioned there you were playing on your Walkman at school.
Hmm.
Did you have vinyl in the house? It sounds like your mum and dad might have had a bit of a collection. Do you?
My dad did. As I said to you, I'm football mad. So I was running around the house, kicking balls around the house, and vinyl was always playing. And yeah, I remember very much sort of vivid memories of sort of Hunky Dory playing when I was sort of growing up, and that album is just I look back on the set list, I hadn't sort of refreshed my memory of that album, and what an incredible album, especially the first side of that album, which is absolutely incredible. You got Changes, Oh You Pretty Things, Life on Mars. It, I have very sort of vivid memories of my dad playing that. And yeah, very much Weller based as well. So the Days of Speed album was very big when I was growing up, which is Weller's sort of spanning his career. It's like an acoustic album, and who knows, maybe that was very much sort of seeped itself into me as sort of the folky sort of singer songwriter thing. Days of Speed, an incredible album by Paul Weller was playing on
Mm.
vinyl when I was growing up from my dad. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Do you remember when you got your first vinyl album that maybe wasn't handed down to you by your parents?
I very much went through sort of going from secondary school to college. I love the band Bright Eyes. There's a band called Bright Eyes that from Nebraska and Omaha, Nebraska, in America. So they released I'm Wide Awake, It's Morning, and Digital Ash and Digital Learn, which is they both released were both released on the same day. One is very much a folky sort of Americana album that sort of leans into your Neil Youngs and your artists like that. And then the other is actually very sort of on the other side, which is very electronics based. And I remember getting those two actually for my birthday and sort of seeing them and having the liner notes and things like that. And yeah, those would have been the two earliest that I would have had. I'd have been about 15, 16, I believe.
Mm. And were you playing those on the family turntable, or had you managed to get a vinyl turntable in your
Yeah, I
bedroom?
was playing very much. Yeah, I didn't leave home till I was about 20. Well, I graduated from uni when I was 23, and then left home a few years later with my partner to live. So yeah, very much sort of playing that music. Very much being criticised for Conor Oberst's, who's the lead singer of Bright Eyes, vocal style, which is very sort of whiny that people would say, and sort of maybe a little bit sort of self-deprecating in his approach in terms of. So I remember sort of having to sort of maybe play it, but maybe play it quite quietly.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. You can't please everyone with your music
No,
taste, can you? Let's be honest.
no, no.
Okay. So through that time, music starts in the house, but we get into the live environment and we start going to see gigs. Can you
Mm.
remember your first musical gig?
My first musical gig, and I was very young. Now I don't remember so much about the gig, so we'll all sort of move swiftly on after we've spoken about it. But I did go and see Michael Jackson in Wembley Stadium. Now this must have been 96, 97. So I wasn't very young. And I got a crazy story. Now we probably would have got into the stadium, through masses of queues and masses of people and things like that. Stood around for quite a long time, and I'd have been perched on my dad's shoulders, waiting for the show to happen. I think he was late coming out. I'm not too sure. As I said, I was 6 or 7 at the time. I haven't asked my parents about this, but I'm pretty sure he was late coming out. Now he come out in a big sort of, you know, smoke and mirrors and all that sort of stuff. Now, as soon as rose from the stage, I said to my mum and dad, "I need to go to the toilet."
Oh, no way.
And sort of being 6 or 7, when a 6 or 7-year-old says to you that they need to go to the toilet, they need to go to the toilet.
Yeah.
And I was brutally mocked for many years after that. That was, we were there once in a lifetime show to see Michael Jackson play, and no kidding you, as soon as he came out, I needed to go to the toilet and made a big fuss, and then sort of, I guess would have been sort of taken down the through the many sort of staircases of Wembley Stadium to go to the toilet and sort of missed the opening of the show. So
Oh,
yeah,
man.
but yeah, as I got older, very much the Killers and going to see the Arctic Monkeys. I went to Live 8. I didn't go to Live Aid, but I went to Live 8, which was in Hyde Park and was all the artists sort of coming together. Your sort of your Pink Floyd, your Coldplays. I think Pete Doherty and Elton John had quite an infamous performance that time as well.
They did, and I was there with my wife, Emma, as well, so it's a small world, isn't it?
It is.
We got 2 tickets for that. What did you think? Can you remember that day? It seemed to be go on forever. There was a lot of delays, and it overran. We missed one of Pink or a couple of Pink Floyd songs because we had to escape. The tube closed at 12 back then, rather than
Right.
being longer. What was your memories of that day?
Yeah, I remember sitting around. Yeah, I think I quite enjoyed it. It was yeah, I can't remember so much of the delays. I remember the one thing I do remember was Robbie Williams put on the best
It was
show.
incredible.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness me! Now I've never been and seen him. I'd never been and seen him before. I've never been and seen him since. But that was just, I love Pink Floyd. Don't get me wrong. That was another one of my dad's bands that would have sort of seeped into me and things like that when I was growing up. But to put them on after Robbie Williams, when he had sort of, I don't know how many people were there, sort of singing, and Angels was just sort of almost biblical, I thought,
Yeah.
um, to sort of have them on after, which was a lot more sort of subdued. I'm sure you'll agree.
Yeah.
um, um, was sort of was something, but yeah, incredible, incredible, very much. Pleasure to be there. I'm not too sure, sort of very sort of cloudy memories in terms of how we got the tickets and things like that, and so much of how much of the day I do remember, but certainly that Robbie Williams performance is burned into my memory. And we sort of left after Pink Floyd. Obviously, once again, cloudy memories in terms of how we got home. But an incredible gig.
From a perspective of Passenger himself, when did you first get to see him live?
The first time I did see him, and it is very late on, it was a Prism gig in Kingston, very much around the release of the anniversary album. In fact, so this was on the 8th of November in Kingston. Now, I thought it was last year, 2024. This was in fact 2023. I
Mm.
do not know how 3 years have nearly passed since I was at this gig, because I remember it like I could have been there last night. It was incredible. But that was my first time seeing him. Very much sort of a low key sort of gig in Kingston. But then what was to come, only a few days later was the Union Chapel gig on the 15th of November, which was very special for the anniversary release.
Yeah. We were lucky to see him a couple of times on that anniversary release tour. We've seen him a number of times over the years. But yeah, there was something special about those smaller, tiny gigs. He played a venue in Leeds called the Brudenell Social Club.
I know, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I've heard of it.
yeah, which is a really iconic but really small venue. So for Passenger to come and do that, it was probably typical of Mike to
Yeah,
want to play a gig of that nature. But
sure.
it was just so intimate, and that was the first time my son Ollie had seen him. So it was really special to me.
Amazing.
But you yourself are a musician, and I guess there comes a point for a lot of people where admiring music and listening to music shifts to wanting to create music. So,
Mm.
what was that moment for you, Marcus? Where did you sort of transition, if you like?
Yeah, as I said, so music seeped into me from such a young age, and sort of 15, 16 years of age. I think my dad probably would have preferred me to play the drums, of course. Um, I have a little son now who was born back in October, and he seems to be liking sort of the percussive nature of things and the tapping and sort of and things like that. So very much maybe he'll be the drum of the family. We'll see. But just yeah, picking the guitar up at 15, 16 years of age, and wanting to sort of, I spoke very clearly about the Bright Eyes album that I received, the Wide Awake It's Morning. Um, album and or sort of all the albums that sort of come before that from Bright Eyes, and they had such a big sort of impact on me, and just wanted to pick the guitar up, and music being played in my family so much, and it just felt natural just to pick the guitar up, and my uncle being a huge influence with me, sadly passed away back in 2023, but I paid my first gig with him. um, I'm not too sure when it would have been, but we played a pub gig local to where I used to live back in Heathrow, near Heathrow Airport. And a couple of my first songs that I played were "That's Entertainment" by Paul Weller and the Jam,
Hmm.
and "High and Dry" by Radiohead, in a sort of a pub surrounded by friends, and he was sort of sat next to me strumming away while I sort of tried to make my way through the songs as well, and it went absolutely fine. But yeah, just picking up the guitar and sort of playing with friends, getting into a band relatively early as well. I was in a band probably within about a year of playing. So by about 17, 18, I was in a band called Quarter Life Crisis, we were called. And just sort of playing with those guys and playing around the local area. And I just think it's great. I think it's great being able to play an instrument and having that. I very much appreciated it later on in life as well. Maybe not so much when you're younger. It's just a bit of fun, but sort of having that release, and having something, especially writing songs and things like that, and just having that unique sort of corner to your sort of your life in terms of playing and writing music. It sort of really sort of I really sort of feel it sets you apart as a person. And yeah, in bands all my life, and yeah, it's been really enjoyed it.
How was that personal songwriting journey for you, Marcus? Going from playing other people's songs and covers, I guess, to then writing your own songs.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So I sort of probably wrote my first song 2015. I was 25, and I wrote sort of three songs that I still sort of play in my band now. But it was very much a sort of a s- just being around my friends, going to uni. I studied music, popular music at uni, and being around people and friends, and I had some really close friends who were writing songs. And when I was in my first band, I was very much writing the music, very much writing the chords, and coming up with structures for songs. But in terms of lyrics, was always sort of very far out for me. Always seemed too far away for me to sort of grasp. And I was very much listening, throughout my life. Lyrics have always been very important to me, and I've always sort of cringed and been very sort of shy to sort of write my own lyrics and things like that. But I just gave it a go. I've just given it a go over the years, and I absolutely love it. I feel so content when I'm sat here playing my guitar and playing my songs I've written and getting up and playing them live with friends. Yeah, it's incredible. It's just been very much a sort of write music, come up with chords, come up with structures, listen to people playing songs, take in what they're writing, and then sort of write my own. It's been a very sort of organic process. I've never rushed it, but very much sort of always been interested in the written language and writing songs. And I think that's very much sort of come through in what I'm doing now.
How did Escape Roots come about at your band, and how would you describe to somebody listening today what influences and what type of music Escape Roots have got?
Yeah, so when I graduated from university, I fell in with a guy via a sort of like a music board. There's a site on the internet called Join My Band. Now I messaged him, and he actually said that he was looking for a guitarist at the time, and he was sort of fronting the band, and we sort of got together and very much went through a couple of years of that process where he was sort of fronting the band and I was playing on the lead guitar. And his name's Joseph Rogers. You'll be able to find him on YouTube and things like that. And I was sort of his side man. There's a lot of videos on YouTube where I'm sort of by the side of him playing. And um, I then joined the Premier League as a runner, and then I've sort of become a video editor actually for the Premier League. Um, and very much had to sadly put the band stuff to the side just while I found my way into a career. I very much, took on a video editing job that sort of kept me quite busy. But then as soon as I got my feet under the table, no pun intended, and sort of felt very much more comfortable in my job and where I was, I sort of wanted to get back into music. I had to quit playing with Joseph Rogers just for the sake of the my career and just sort of getting that on track. But then, as I said, as soon as I'd settled into my job, I'd always stayed in touch with him, and he said, "Oh, come along. Me and my friend Rick are going to have a jam session in a sort of local rehearsal studio." And I went along, and then just started playing some original songs and some covers and jamming. And there was a lot of songs that I'd written back in 2015, and I sort of brought those to the band and was like, I'd never sort of planned to play them live, but I sort of was like, these are the songs that I've got, and we integrated them into our set. And what was good about the band, and is still very much good about the band, is Joe Rogers, who now plays on the drums, very much a multi-talented gentleman. He now plays on the drums and sings his songs. I sing my songs, and then we've also got Rick Ball, who also sings his songs, and then we've got Dave, who plays the bass. And we're quite an interesting band, and I think there may be a situation where people might not get us because I sing my songs, and Rick sings his songs, and Joe sings his songs, and there are differences, but we are sort of under the umbrella of sort of a garage rock band. Very much sort of storytelling and big riffs and choruses, and Rick's very much a virtuoso on the electric guitar by way of sort of the rootsy sort of sound of sort of your slide slides, your sort of still slide playing and things like that. And that's the sort of sound that we have. And yeah, maybe people don't get the band so much, but it's very much a collaborative process where I'll bring songs to the band, Joe will bring songs to the band, Rick will bring songs to the band, and then we sort of pick them up and go from there.
So it sounds like there's a quite eclectic taste to the Escape Roots band. It
Yeah.
doesn't just seem to fit under one. It sounds like you've got multiple voices, multiple songwriting points of view coming all into that melting pot of one band. So it sounds like it'd be an incredibly eclectic night if someone came to watch you play.
It is. It is. I'm bringing the energy. I don't stand still on the stage. I'm very much just sort of moving around and playing. And then Joe sort of brings a very sort of traditional. He was sort of very much influenced, by your Elvises and people like that. And then Rick sort of very much comes from I don't know, quite a traditional point of view as well, but almost quite Hendrixy. Um, it's very much Pink Floyd, sort of Led Zeppelin sort of thing. So it is a very it's we make it work, and we've had a lot of fun. As I said, I'm not playing in the band as much now due to my little son coming along in October, but it's very much a sort of a hiatus for the meantime whilst I sort of get my life together. But yeah, going back to the influences of the band, very much a melting pot of influences, and we really make it work. We've really had some rocking nights. We've played sort of Leicester Square, and we've played High Tide in Twickenham last year, which is their sort of annual summer festival, and that set is actually on YouTube. Actually, that whole set is on YouTube. To see. And yeah, just incredible. Yeah, really good fun. And I'm sure you'll see if you watch the video just how much sort of fun we do have on stage, and how different our songs are, but also that we do sort of sit under the same umbrella of sort of alternative folk riffy rock.
So I saw a video of you on Instagram, Marcus, with just yourself with an acoustic guitar playing a track that you'd been inspired by another podcast, the Conversation on a Bench.
Yes, yes.
What? How did that happen, and how is it different? You playing your songs acoustically on your own versus being in a band format.
Yeah, as I said, I think that there's the common thing that any good song, if you can play it well on an acoustic guitar, you can play it well in a band. All of the songs that I've mostly written are written on acoustic guitar, and I sort of bring them to the band and things like that. And so I sort of very much admire, as I said, I'm very much in admiration of your singer-songwriters, your Laura Marlings, your Ryan Adams, your Neil Youngs, your there's a lot more sort of contemporary artists that I like, and I just love watching how an artist is able to command a room and command a song, obviously, with just nothing but an acoustic guitar. That really, really does appeal to me. And yeah, I'm writing my songs on the acoustic, and if I can get out and play them and speak about my influences, which is, yeah, as you say, Strangers on a Bench, which is a podcast that I listen to every Monday. But yeah, that sort of seeped into my songwriting. And if I can sort of speak about and reflect my life and what I'm doing at the time within a song, then and that all the better.
Yeah, and it was an absolutely beautiful song that you'd written, and,
Thank you.
I don't know whether the guy who does that podcast, will ever hear it, but,
Mm,
I think if he ever did, he'd be incredibly touched that
yeah.
he'd managed to influence, a song of such beauty. I think he'd be,
Thanks.
on a human level, I think he'd be really touched.
Thanks. It's
Um,
it's yeah, thank you. That's really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but that brings us nicely into Passenger again,
Mm,
and to talk about the album that we're here to chat about today, All the
of
Little
course.
Lights from 2012 from Passenger. Um, it's a album that seems to be built on restraint, observation, songs that don't really shout for attention.
Mm,
It's one of my personal favorite albums,
mm,
and as I say, I've lived with it since 2012. It's traveled with me a long time. So,
mm.
what's your first connection to this album, Marcus? Where did it come into your life?
Yes. So I would have been listening to him a long time before that in terms of hearing the sort of the singles being released. Not too sure what the singles were. I believe "Let It Go" obviously would have come out as a single, but I don't think it was the first single released from the album.
It was certainly the first single that caught my attention.
Yeah.
It was, I remember it being played on, it would have been Radio 2. And I remember hearing it and thinking, wow,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
an incredible track. And
Oh,
that put
incredible.
me onto Passenger.
Yeah. No, yeah, of course. And just I would have found it would have been very much an algorithmic find, you know. I would have been sort of searching YouTube and listening to sort of my favorite singer-songwriters and, recommended on the right-hand side of YouTube sort of panel would have been a Passenger song, and I would have found him through that. And I would have listened to that, and yeah, the album obviously would have been released in 2012. So I was sort of going through university at this time. So very much the most vivid memory I have from this album would have been sort of my final year at university, which would have been sort of 2012 going into 2013, which is obviously when the album was released. And I sort of lived, it was in Northampton, and I was studying popular music in Northampton. I probably lived about a 20-minute walk from the university. And sort of I'd walk through the race course, which is the sort of big sort of open green in Northampton, which sits opposite the university. And sort of walking through Northampton, which would have been sort of very sort of vivid memories of it being very cold and frosty, and was having to watch my footing as I left my house and walking to the university to continue with my studies and listening to this album. And I think, and when you're listening and you're standing, and it's sort of got a bit of a wintry feel to me. This album as well has got a bit of a wintry feel to me. Um, and sort of my third year of university, I very much locked myself away as I worked on my final dissertation project of the year. And this album, as soon as I hear it, oh my goodness, the memories that come back are me sort of, traveling out really early in the morning and getting really home late at night, just listening to this album, bookending my day,
Yeah.
and very much sort of, you know, just such a you know music and place and time and feel and smell, and they're all sort of linked. And this album, my sort of last year at university, this album is that.
And was it something that, sometimes people can listen to albums and they're very immediate and they get an instant connection with. For you, was it instant or did it unveil itself over time? Is it something that grew?
100%. The one thing I love, and as I said, going back to I tried to sort of look back into my past and see where sort of this influence would have came. But I was sort of talking about my sister with her sort of adolescent years of listening to sort of garage and rap and things like that, and wordplay that's very quick. I've sort of been very sort of influenced by by that. I very much then sort of molded that into my sort of folky, alternative, folky, rocky sort of aesthetic of I love songs that have a lot of words. And this album is just littered with, things that stop you dreaming. That first verse and into the chorus and the whole song and staring at the stars and obviously, the wrong direction, keep on walking, life's for the living. These songs are just polluted with stories and characters, and the wordplay I think is fantastic. I'm sure you agree.
Yeah, well, I find it almost conversational.
Mm.
It's like overheard thoughts rather than statements. It's
Yeah.
almost like it's an album about moments that you don't realize they matter until they've gone.
Oh, of
Um,
course.
so, as a songwriter, how does Passenger style on this album? When he was very much starting out here, he's still a traveling writer. He's come from that busking background,
Mm,
and then
mm.
he's produced this album that's given him this global hit, and this is his
Yeah.
doorway to global success.
Yeah.
As a songwriter, how does it resonate with you?
Just incredibly, as I said, so many words. The characters that are coming through. I think if I had to pick one song, I think "Life for the Living" is absolutely gorgeous. An absolutely gorgeous song. I've got the lyrics up for "Life for the Living" on my page here, and I can't even fit all the lyrics on one page. I have to scroll down to see the whole song, which is what, as I say, the song is littered with beautiful sort of lines and things like that. Well, grey clouds wrapped around the towns like elastic. Cars stood like toys made of Taiwanese plastic, like, and just what it goes on to, and just his journey through the song. And then obviously ending in that last sort of verse, till then I'll make my bed from a disused car with a mattress of leaves and a blanket of stars, and I'll stitch the words into my heart with a needle of thread, which is very much the song coming to its conclusion, which I think is incredible in that chorus, which comes in. Don't you cry for the lost, smile for the living, get what you need and give what you're given. Life's for the living, so live it, or you're better off dead. And you know, what an incredible chorus, and it just the album is just littered with these incredible songs, and yeah, just means so much to me. Really does.
Yeah, just as you were reading those lyrics, you're setting the hairs up on the back of my neck because he is such an incredible songwriter. And
Mm,
he's got an incredible back catalogue as well. When you
indeed.
think about his body of music, ultimately, he's ended up doing the musical for Harold Fry down in London
Yes.
and
Yes.
writing all the songs and lyrics for that. And
Yeah.
and you can kind of see his journey, but this being the starting point. Certainly not his starting point because Passenger itself began as a band
Yeah.
before they had a couple of records out before Mike went solo,
Yeah.
and that he carried on the name Passenger, which was the name of the band originally. And then has gone on to have absolutely phenomenal success.
Yeah.
Um, but there are so many themes on this particular album. Thinking about there's loneliness versus connection, there's
Mm,
simplicity and strength, there's love
yeah.
and there's loss, but
Mm,
it's quiet themes. There's
yeah, it
no
is.
grand,
No.
none of it hits you over the head with a sledgehammer. It's very cleverly done and very subtle.
Yeah, and just I'd like to sort of maybe speak about the final song as well, "Feather on the Clyde," which I think incredible song and one that maybe sticks with me most in terms of I was speaking about my final year at university, and I graduated from Northampton University back in 2013, and sadly, the course leader of my course at Northampton University took his life in 2018.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, very sad. And sadly, never went back to see him after I graduated. Actually, and it come as a huge shock to me, hearing that he had done this, and very much a big character. His name was Nathan Wiseman Trouse. Yeah, and he was he was popular music course leader and such a big character. Very sort of quiet in himself, not such a big character personality wise, but had sort of big hair and a big beard and would sort of walk around in sort of flared trousers, and an incredible intellectual in terms of music as well. Had written books about popular music and written a book about Nick Drake as well, in particular.
Okay.
Um, and for some reason, yeah, Feather on the Clyde just very much sits as when I hear that song, very much I'm very much reminiscent of my days at university, but very much reminiscent of him, who was very much sort of guiding me through those years at university, and incredibly sort of intellectual, and would always sort of be guiding me through my studies, and yeah, that song's very much about sort of loss and remembrance, and sort of it's the song that very much sort of reminds me. It's the sort of, if I had to pick one song that reminds me of sort of my university days, which this album clings onto, um, that is the one song that very much, maybe makes me feel quite, yeah, quite maybe a bit sort of sadder about those times, but very much a remembrance song, and
Mm.
very much a song that that does make me sort of think about those days and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a very emotional and a very poignant song on the album. Um, I guess we can't talk about this album without talking about "Let Her Go."
Of
That
course.
that is obviously the big one, the breakthrough. I'd say
Mm,
that started and kickstarted his I guess global success now.
sure.
Um, he's got it's overarching themes of regret and hindsight.
Yeah.
Valuing something once it's gone. Um, I guess there's a wider question around why, as humans, sometimes we only realize why it matters when we've gone. But I think he
Mm.
encapsulates it perfectly in a 3-minute song. What's your thoughts on that particular track?
Yeah, as I said, the chorus is, I think it's we can all relate. The biggest and best songs, are songs that you can sort of relate to, and it is about loss, and yeah, just sometimes you don't know. And I think there are interviews with him on the internet and things where he didn't know that the song was going to take off as well as it did, and sometimes you just need to throw it out there. And he's obviously written a song which everyone can relate to, and has got a really strong chorus, and is the perfect duration, and there's certain alchemy in songwriting where he would have written this song very quick. I think I had read in an article that he'd, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure this is one of the songs that he had written quite quickly for the album. And sometimes it's just a flow of consciousness that comes out, and that chorus, is the anchor point for all the rest of the verses that sort of sit around it. And when you've got such a strong chorus, the verses just play their part, and it is a song that it's an earworm, isn't it? I think we need to also talk about how much of a virtuoso he is on guitar. There's some beautiful guitar lines on this song. Him as an acoustic player is absolutely beautiful, and that intro sort of pattern and riff that he plays on the guitar hook you in instantly. If the chorus isn't going to get you, and the verses aren't going to get you, and sort of how the song sort of builds throughout, that hook of the initial sort of guitar line at the start is beautiful, and that sort of mimics, a lot throughout the rest of the album.
Yeah, you're right on all accounts, Marcus. It's absolutely stunning. The way he delivers it live as
Mm,
well, and I've seen him play it many, many times,
yeah.
is spellbinding.
Yeah.
Which brings me on to another track off the album that when it kind of takes on another life when he plays it live, and that's a song called Holes.
I think I would say that's probably another one which has got, the strong chorus, and when he plays that song live, it's almost like a call to arms, isn't it?
It
You know,
is.
we've got holes in our hearts, you've got holes in our lives, but we've got holes, but we carry on. You know what I mean? And everyone can get behind it. And it almost becomes quite, a song that sounds quite, you know, as you say, when he plays it live, it becomes very sort of rousing, and he sort of really brings out a raw energy to that song that maybe doesn't sit on the album, but certainly, there are certainly songs as a songwriter myself that, you sort of sit and you play yourself, but when you sort of play them live, they sort of take on a different dynamic. And I think that's certainly one of those songs where when he's playing it, that you can't help but get a little bit sort of emotional and rousing when you're saying we've got holes in our hearts and holes in our lives, but we carry on.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Emotional's the word. Again, I've seen him play it so many times, but I think my favorite time was watching him play it on the anniversary tour in Leeds with my son Ollie.
Mm,
And it builds and it builds and it builds. And
mm.
by the time he gets to near the end of the song and he's asking the crowd to get involved, and he's like, "Come on, Leeds, will you sing it with me?" And we're all belting it out at
Yeah,
the
yeah,
top of our voices.
yeah.
It's like watching him transform, because he's a very as a guitar player, when you're watching him play,
Mm,
he his body language represents the song that he's playing. So if he's playing a
mm,
very
mm.
quiet song, his body shape and the way he articulates himself on stage
Yeah, yeah,
kind of mimics that. And
of
then
course.
when you're going into a song like Holes and you get into the end of it, he is thrashing around. He's hot. He's sweaty. He's
Yeah,
all, he's embodying
yeah.
the song. I think that's what I'm trying to get to.
He usually
Absolutely
leaves it
embodied it.
he usually leaves it to the end as well, obviously, using all the
Yeah,
energy up. And as you say, that's the one thing I maybe didn't reflect on too much. It is a sing along track as well. It's such a simple. It's a 4 line, you know, chorus where people can sort of join in, and it's so easy to sing, and it's so rousing, and it does sort of fill you with this sort of hope, and sort of, you're all singing there together, and that's what music's all about, isn't it? It's singing along together, and it's enjoying the moment, and enjoying the message, of course, as well.
yeah, absolutely. The other song I wanted to touch on was one about resilience. It's a simple song, but it's quite determined, and that's "Keep on Walking." And I
Yes.
and I think that is an incredibly powerful message for us living our
Oh yeah.
lives.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I love that one. I actually got that sort of almost confused, the message of that one, a little bit confused earlier with the Life for the Living, where I like how last night I couldn't sleep. I got up and started walking. It's like this. I can imagine as a songwriter myself, this would have been another song where he would have written it quite quickly, because it's a journey, isn't it? It's a journey. The song, he says, "Well, last night I couldn't sleep," and by the end of the song, I walked into the morning and sort of felt the sunlight warming on my shoulders. It's like, yeah, it's incredible. It's amazing, and the imagery that he picks out. I walked past the late night boys with their bottles in the doorways, and I walked past the businessmen sleeping like babies in their cars. It's like we've all done it as well. You know, it's the relation that I think he brings with these songs, and the connection that we have, that we've all spent. Even going back to the third, the opening lines he opens with, well, last night I couldn't sleep, got up, started walking down the end of the street and into my town. Had no one to meet and had no taste for talking. Since I'm talking my whole life, it's time I listen now. And that's also fantastic. I really admire that sort of verse of sort of him sort of, I imagine maybe he'd got back from a gig and those lines sort of come to his head where he is a songwriter and he's constantly singing and he's constantly telling his stories. But that verse writes itself, where what he's trying to say is, I got back, well, last night I couldn't sleep, and maybe he got back from a gig. You know what it's like when you get back from a gig and the adrenaline's pumping. And that verse is almost written itself, where he's saying the end, beginning of the verse, he's saying, I got up and I couldn't sleep, maybe buzzing off adrenaline of a gig, and then, I'm talking my whole life, it's time I listen now. And
Mm.
then the whole song goes on to what he sort of is, um, noticing and picking up, and things like that. And yeah, and Stone as well. A lot of Passenger songs involve stones, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They
He
do.
likes to talk about Rolling Stones and stones being formed, and it's such an, yeah, it's a good grasp to include that sort of thing into a song. There's always sort of an angle on a stone, no pun intended, to hit, that will sort of yeah, relate to sort of life, and going through life and maybe feeling a little bit jagged, but letting life sort of form you into the person you're going to be, you know?
So obviously, we're a long time on from you listening to this album on your Walkman in those college days. Are there any tracks that have changed meaning for you over time that you?
Yeah, maybe if I had to pick like one I don't gravitate towards much as maybe like Circles, maybe, but then I really like that. I really like the outro to Circles. You know, we're circles. You see that one. You know, there's not one song that I don't like. I have very vivid memories of being at university, sat with a good friend of mine, who's a songwriter, and hasn't put out too much stuff, but a friend of mine who writes songs, and listening to The Wrong Direction. And I love that, The Wrong Direction. Like the wordiness of that is the wordplay is probably the wordplay on The Wrong Direction is probably the quickest on the album, would you say? You know, the when you're together, you don't want to be single with that way, sort of that the wordplay is incredible, you know, on that song. And I remember sort of sat with him, and I love the line about not jumping into the river because of the ear infection line. And I
Yeah.
remember sort of, being sat with my friend and, listening to that song and having a bit of a laugh about those lines, and just, songwriting that doesn't take itself too seriously is really big for me. You know, have a bit of a laugh, and, you know, being able to make someone laugh through lyrics is you know, it's quite tough, you know. And I think everyone wants to listen to a song. Everyone wants to take it so seriously sometimes. But I'm such a big fan of John Prine, who sort of wrote songs, and a lot of his songs are just mired in sarcasm and jokes and laughs and things like that. But also, you know, heartbreak as well. So I love the sort of the songs that don't take themselves too seriously, but also, you know, if you could spin it and make someone sort of think, "Oh, okay, yeah, you know, you got me there, but you know, you're breaking my heart at the same time." I think that's the key of a great song.
Yeah, and he's such a humble guy. I think he gets the balance on all his
Mm.
albums really right, where he can be quite self-deprecating, I think, and he can, still put out killer tracks that make you
Mm.
stopping your
Of
tracks and
course, of
go, "Oh my
course.
god!" Right? So, thinking about the anniversary edition,
Mm.
obviously, when this album was released in 2012, the anniversary edition comes out in 2023. What's your thoughts? Because he didn't just reissue this album, he reshaped this album.
Yeah,
And the first album, he doesn't know where these songs are going to take him. He
yeah,
puts this album out, he's got no idea what trajectory it's going to have. He puts an anniversary edition in and he's looking backwards. It's quite reflective,
yeah,
retrospective, but the songs are redone with a kind of a hindsight of knowing the direction of travel. Um,
yeah.
what's your thought about the anniversary version of these songs?
Yeah, as I said, you know, very much a different slant. Obviously, working with, um, collaborating as well on the various tracks that he did. But no, yeah, I honestly think, you know, certainly the collaborations. I think Foy Vance brings absolutely gorgeous slant to Life for the Living. A little known act called Ed Sheeran on Let Her Go. So that was sort of interesting, and someone that obviously was very much supportive of Mike as he was coming through. And I remember seeing a video. I'm not sure if it was on Ed Sheeran's page or Passenger's page of him playing him the song backstage, like just as he sort of played it, and you could sort of see Ed Sheeran sort of really vibing out to it. So obviously they've got a very personal connection to that song, the both of them, and sort of yeah, you know, a different slant. But I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Are there any tracks on the anniversary album that you think are enhanced or improved by the anniversary edition versus the original? Would you gravitate to listening to one over the other, or are they two standalone bodies of work?
Yeah, I think, you know, when these or sort of when these new albums get reissued, you know, they do come with a different slant. But I am sort of, yeah, certainly sort of chain myself to the memories and the feelings that I have from the first album. But I yeah, it's you know, two bodies of work, and I always admire artists that sort of recognize bodies of work sort of 10 years down the line and things like that, and put a different slant on the songs. Um, but yeah, sort of almost very much sort of side by side is two different bodies of work, I imagine.
Yeah, that's how I look at it, to be honest with you. I try not to compare. But the great thing is, because of his consistency in his vocal delivery, I
Mm.
can enjoy both albums independently.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I don't sit and listen to the anniversary edition and go, "Oh, why did he do that?" Or
No.
why has he changed that vocal or that guitar piece there?
Yeah.
I'm listening to the two as two very, very different. You've got the younger, hopeful Mike's passenger version to the I'm now experienced. I'm now at a point in time where, I don't know whether he's done everything that he hoped to do. Obviously, he's gone on to write the musical for Harold Fry, which, if you
Yeah.
haven't seen, is absolutely incredible.
I haven't seen the show, but the album is fantastic. The album is, I think this probably is a good time to also talk about how prolific he is as a songwriter. For someone who can probably, like me, could maybe crank out 2, maybe 3 songs a year, Passengers cranking out
Album after
albums
album.
out. Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, and those songs are brilliant. Yeah, Maureen, Tinner Soup for One, um, Keep on Walking, Mr. Fry, The Letter, One for the Road. Like, just unbelievable. From a songwriter myself, I'm so envious of his writing. It's fantastic. His body of work is huge, and it just seems to come so sort of natural to him, and he puts in the work, as we've spoken about. He has busked in the past, and um, very much just a generational talent, I think. A lot of people sadly will only maybe remember him for Let It Go. And that's a bit of a shame, because certainly the songs on all the Little Lights are fantastic. But you talk about the other albums as well that sort of precede that. Also, delve back into some of his earlier catalogs, and there'll be some fantastic songs. But also the stuff that came, a lot later, was has all been sort of so fantastic. For instance, Whispers, 27, Hearts of Fire, Bullets, Rolling Stone, Whispers, Ride into New York, which is an absolutely fantastic song. You've then got Whispers 2. What album, what artist brings out one album and then puts two after it, in terms of the same album, but he's just got so much material. And then, Young as the Morning, Old as the Sea, um, and just everything that's come after Sunday Night Sessions, which was the fantastic sort of covers album that he did, where he's covering the likes of Heart of Gold and Space Odyssey, Vincent, and It Stone Me, which was one of my favorite songs by Van Morrison. Like, the guy is just an absolute musical powerhouse, isn't he?
He is, and I was gonna ask you, if you were recommending Passenger to somebody who hadn't listened to him before, is All the Little Lights the starting point, do you think? Or would you recommend that they go listen elsewhere in his back catalogue?
Yeah, I thought Whispers was fantastic, the follow-up to All These Little Lights. I thought, I would probably say, yeah, maybe those 2 albums are the 2 albums that sort of really brought him into prominence and things like that. I would certainly recommend. I'm always one for sort of, when I listen back to All the Little Lights, like, I always sort of maybe sometimes shy away from the most popular track, like Let Her Go. I might skip, and that's not out of this respect of I'll listen to it as much as I can, like, when I'm sort of, when I want to listen to Let Her Go, I'll listen to it. But I'm very much someone who delves into the deep cuts of albums and listens to those other songs. And there's a lot of songs on different albums that I love, which, there's the hits on the album, but there's songs on those albums which are just hit me with so much sort of, you know they hit me with so many memories. I would pick out Sam's Town by the Killers, for instance, where you've got When You Were Young and you've got Bones. But Why Do I Keep Counting by the Killers is probably one of the biggest and best album closing songs I've ever heard. And I love just delving into deep cuts on albums and not just always looking for the hit, but sort of listening for those other great songs and albums. And those are the ones I'd recommend as well as the big hits. I'd recommend them, but also recommend the deeper cuts to people as well.
Mm. Brilliant. Okay, let's just touch on the artwork. What
Yep.
it's quite a striking cover for the original, and obviously the anniversary edition has mimicked that, but it's given it a much warmer tone.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts on the original artwork?
Yeah, quite minimalistic. Obviously, he's got all the little, the album's called All the Little Lights, and you've got all the little lights sort of flashing on the sort of the cover. You can sort of see the sun sort of poking out behind the sort of trees. Very sort of folky aesthetic of sort of like almost like a painting, really, isn't it? So beautiful colours as well. I love the hues and the blues and the sun there and the lovely sort of dots of all the little lights of the colours and things like that, the sky and the trees. Very much, as I said, a folky aesthetic. But yeah, well, how about yourself? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I think it captures movement. I think it suggests possibility. I think it's very a hopeful front cover when I look at that. And then obviously for the anniversary edition, we've got it's the same picture, but the colours are different.
Yeah,
We've gone into more of that sunset reflective red.
that's it. Yeah, it is. Yeah, and then very much the same. Obviously, isn't it? Just very much the same sort of you got the different lights, but yeah, very much different hues of colours, and yeah, maybe looks a bit more like a folky album than one that the original artwork maybe looks a bit more poppy. Would you say?
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think it's got a much more reflective glow, hasn't it? It
Mm.
suggests. I think
This
it's more. It's looking backwards. I think it's more of a memory, capturing memory, and suggests a bit of appreciation. I think on the anniversary edition, whereas as we say, the first one a little bit more vivid and a little bit more forward looking. I think.
Yeah, sort of a lot more mature looking, I would say. I guess the anniversary edition, sort of a bit more sort of, they're stripping out more of they're stripping out like the primary colours and going for more of a sort of a relaxed sort of approach, aren't they?
Yeah. Does album covers for you, do they reflect the tone of the record, or does it not matter as much to you?
Yeah, I do delve in. I'm a huge fan of visual art, and how it inspires me so much. I love like concept art and things like that and cartoons, but also love, yeah, album artwork is it's so important, isn't it? I think it's very much it's the first thing you see. It's like a book, isn't it? You see the front of a book, and if the front page of a book strikes you, you're going to immediately read the blurb of the book and try and learn a little bit more about it. And we've all got our sort of styles and likings of things we like. I'm very much sort of from a folky aesthetic, so and those sort of looks of faded colours and stitching and fabrics and things like that are very much appeal to me. And animations and artwork, and yeah, it very much draws me in. I think it's the first thing you see, isn't it? If you're shopping if you haven't heard the album before and you're out vinyl shopping, it's the first thing you see. It's the first thing that's going to bring you to the album, and if you can relate to what you see, then you may have found the record of your life.
Yeah, and to be honest, Marcus, I think the on the original album, the album art really sets the tone for the music inside.
Mm.
And there are some albums that do that, and there are some albums that, even though they're striking, maybe you put them on and you think, "Whoa, I wasn't expecting that." So I think he's got that balance right. I think he's been very clever in
Yeah.
because he
Yes.
could have gone so many different ways, but he didn't. And
No.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's bright, obviously. Yeah, the first album is very bright, sort of brings you in. It's very sort of, it's full of color, it's full of life, which is what the album is. It's full of great lines and characters and stories, and it's a full-bodied record, isn't it? There's no instrumentals, there's no packing punches, there's not many guitar solos on the album. It's all very sort of these sort of spun tales of life and death and loss and memory and remembrance, and it's just a full body record, and that's exactly what the front cover gives you as well.
I think you've summed it up perfectly there, Marcus. Thank you for that. Uh,
No problem.
Marcus, Marcus, we always close the podcast with a recommendation for the listener from yourself. It could be old, it could be new. Do you have a musical recommendation? Um, Maybe one of your Escaped Roots track. But is there anything you want to share with the listeners?
So yeah, to talk about my band Escape Roots, I give them a shout out. We've got 2 EPs out. The first EP is called Tell Tales. There's one of the songs on there that I sing, which is called Banana Bread. It's a bit of a comedic take on two people sitting at a fuel station. You'll understand if you sort of read into the lyrics and things like that. It sort of weaves in and out a little bit. And then we've got another EP that followed, called Somewhere in Between, and I feature on two of those songs. I sort of bookend um, tracks 2 and 3. A song called Pull the Trigger, and a song called Forest Fire. Um, and yeah, I hope you to get out and enjoy them. But if I was to make a recommendation of a band that I really love, I'd make a recommendation of a band called the Felice Brothers. They're a band from the Catskills area of New York, and I think they're just a fantastic American band. Very much the last proper American band, I think, sort of singing about scenarios and cast of characters in America. And it's all quite ramshackle and a bit hectic, but just absolutely beautiful tunes from a couple of brothers, Ian and James Felice. There's an album called From Dreams to Dust, which I'd like to recommend, which I think is an absolutely fantastic album from a band called Felice Brothers.
Fantastic. Well, Marcus, thank you so much for bringing all the little lights and your journey through Escaped Roots to Friday Vinyl Club. Did you enjoy that?
I loved it. Thank you so much. I've had such a great time. It's been really great fun and such good fun to speak to you.
Oh, fantastic. It's always fascinating listening to how music moves through our lives. To our listeners, you'll find a few companion tracks from Passage's album on the Friday Vinyl Club playlist on Spotify. I'll also put a link in the show notes to Marcus's band Escape Roots. If you want to contact us, you can contact us on @JamieB1973 on Instagram, or you can email us at thefridayvinylclub@hotmail.com. Please leave a like, a comment, or a follow wherever you listen to podcasts. It's the only way that a small family podcast like ours can grow without ads or sponsors. So every bit of support is really appreciated. So until next time, keep your records spinning and your stories alive. Thanks, Marcus. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.